There is a specific kind of pain that no one ever talks about. It is not the pain of losing someone you love. It is not the pain of failure. It is not even the pain of heartbreak. It is the pain of being invisible inside your own home, inside your own family, surrounded by the people who were supposed to love you the most, and feeling like a ghost among them. That was my life. My name is Daniel. I grew up in a house that looked perfectly normal from the outside. A clean neighborhood, a decent home, a family that smiled at neighbors and laughed at dinner tables. But behind closed doors, there was a hierarchy. Unspoken, unwritten, but absolutely real. And I was at the bottom of it. I had two brothers. Marcus, the oldest, was everything my parents dreamed of. Sharp mind, perfect grades, the kind of son fathers brag about at work. My dad's eyes would literally light up when Marcus walked into a room. I used to watch that spark, and wonder what it felt like to be looked at that way. Then there was James, the middle brother. Athletic, charming, effortlessly good at everything he touched. Teachers loved him. Girls adored him. Even strangers seemed to gravitate toward him like he carried some invisible warmth. And then me, Daniel, the youngest, the quiet one, the one who struggled, the one who stared at math problems until his eyes blurred, the one who read the same paragraph 4 times and still didn't understand it, the one who sat in the back of every family photograph, not because someone put me there, but because that's just where I naturally drifted. Nobody ever said it out loud. That's the cruel thing about this kind of family dynamic. Nobody ever sat me down and said, "Daniel, we think you're worthless." They didn't have to. It lived in the sighs. The disappointed silences after report cards. The way my mother would say, "Well, you tried your best, honey," in that soft, pitying voice that somehow hurt more than anger ever could. It lived in the comparisons. Your brother Marcus had a 4.0 GPA at your age. James was already playing varsity by sophomore year. What happened with you, Daniel? What happened with me? Like I was a project that had gone wrong somewhere. A batch that didn't turn out right. I remember one Thanksgiving. I must have been 16 when my uncle asked everyone at the table what their plans were for the future. Marcus talked about medical school. The whole table leaned in, nodding, proud. James talked about his athletic scholarship prospects. More smiles. More pride. Then my uncle turned to me. "And what about you, Danny boy?" I opened my mouth. I had been thinking about computers, about technology, about this growing world of the internet that fascinated me more than anything else in my life. I wanted to say something about that. But before I could speak, my dad laughed. Not a mean laugh. Not a cruel laugh. It was almost casual. Almost gentle. "Daniel's still figuring it out," he said, waving his hand like he was brushing away a small inconvenience. The table moved on. Someone asked Marcus a follow-up question. The conversation flowed past me like a river around a small stone. I sat there, fork in my hand, smile frozen on my face. And something inside me, something quiet and deep, made a decision that night. Not a loud decision, not an angry one, just a cold, clear, certain one. The problem with deciding to prove people wrong is that nobody tells you how long it's going to take. Nobody warns you that there will be years, actual years, where nothing works, where every attempt fails, where you start to wonder if maybe they were right about you all along. That darkness, I lived in it for a long time. After high school, Marcus went straight to a prestigious university on a full academic scholarship. James got recruited for college athletics. There were parties, celebrations. Our house was electric with pride. I enrolled in a local community college because that's what my grades allowed. My dad drove me there on the first day. The ride was mostly silent. When we pulled up, he looked at the building for a moment, then looked at me. "Just do something useful, Daniel," he said. That was it. No encouragement. No hug. No, "I believe in you. Just do something useful." I got out of the car and walked inside alone. Community college was actually where something shifted for me, quietly, slowly, like a tide turning. I took a basic computer science class not because anyone suggested it, but because it was the only class that didn't make me feel stupid. Something about logic, about systems, about building things from nothing. It made sense to me in a way that nothing in school ever had. I started staying late in the computer lab. Then I started watching online tutorials at home. Then I started building small things, tiny websites, simple programs, basic apps that nobody ever saw. But I saw them. And for the first time in my life, I felt capable. I didn't tell my family. Not because I was strategic about it, but because I already knew the response. I could already hear my dad's casual dismissal. My brother Marcus's polite but condescending, "That's cute, man." My uncle's permanent smirk. So I kept it quiet. I treated it like a secret garden, something I grew in private because I knew if I let anyone near it too soon, they would trample it before it had a chance to take root. By 20, I had built my first real product. A small software tool that helped local businesses manage their customer data more easily. Nothing revolutionary, but real, functional, mine. I found 3 small businesses willing to pay a monthly fee to use it. The first month, I made $340. I remember sitting at my desk looking at that number. $340. I know that sounds small. I know that's nothing compared to what was coming. But I want you to understand what that number meant to me in that moment. It meant I was right. They were wrong. I reinvested everything. Improved the product. Reached out to more businesses. Slowly, painfully slowly, the numbers grew. $340. Then $800. Then $2,000. Then $5,000 a month. All while living in the same house. All while my family assumed I was going nowhere. At family dinners, they had stopped even asking about my plans. I had become background noise. Furniture. Present but irrelevant. Marcus graduated medical school. There was a huge celebration. Extended family flew in. My mom cried happy tears. My dad stood at the head of the table and gave a speech about legacy and pride. I sat there, smiled, clapped, and went back to my room that night and worked until 4 a.m. But not every night was strong. I want to be honest about that. There were nights where I sat alone and questioned everything. Nights where the product broke and I couldn't fix it. Nights where a client canceled and I lost a chunk of revenue. Nights where the silence of my room felt like confirmation. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was foolish. Maybe I was just the dumb one after all. On one of those nights, a particularly bad one, I walked downstairs for a glass of water. My dad was still up, watching television. He looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. I almost told him. I was so close. I almost said, "Dad, I'm building something. I'm struggling, but I'm building something. I just need you to tell me once, that you believe in me." Instead, I said, "Yeah, just thirsty." He nodded and looked back at the TV. I went back upstairs, and I worked until sunrise. By 22, my monthly revenue had crossed $25,000. Let me say that again, $25,000. Every single month. Coming into an account that only I knew existed. From a business that only I had built. From ideas that people in this very house had laughed at. I had moved out by then, quietly, without drama. Just told my parents I was getting my own place. My dad asked how I was going to afford it. I told him I had been saving. He didn't press further. My apartment was small. Simple. But it was mine. And in that space, with no sighs, no comparisons, no disappointed silences, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. And from that peace, I built faster than ever. I expanded the product. Hired my first employee, a developer named Chris who was brilliant and believed in what we were creating. Then a second employee. Then a third. I incorporated the business properly. Got legal contracts. Built real infrastructure. The product evolved from a simple customer management tool into a full business automation platform. We helped companies streamline their entire operations, saving them time, saving them money, scaling their growth. Word spread. Slowly at first, then all at once. The way these things always happen. By 23, we had over 200 business clients. Monthly revenue crossed $100,000. I had a real team, a real office, a real company. And still, my family knew nothing. I kept showing up at Sunday dinners. Kept answering questions with vague non-answers. Work is fine. Things are going okay. I wasn't lying. I was just waiting. For what? I didn't fully know yet. Some moment. Some right time. Then came the acquisition. A large technology company had been watching the market. They were looking to acquire platforms in our space. Someone referred them to us. Their team spent 3 months doing due diligence, reviewing our code, our client base, our revenue, our growth trajectory. Then their lead negotiator called me personally. I was sitting in my office. Chris was in the next room. Outside the window, the city was doing what cities do, loud, alive, completely indifferent to the quiet revolution happening inside this building. Daniel, he said, we've completed our review. We'd like to make a formal offer. I'm listening, I said. $47 million. Full acquisition. The room didn't spin. That's what surprises me when I think back to that moment. You'd expect the room to spin. You'd expect tears or screaming or some dramatic movie reaction. Instead, I felt completely still. Like deep water. Like the moment after a storm when everything goes quiet and the air is perfectly clean. I thanked him. Told him I'd review the formal documents with my attorney. Hung up the phone. Sat in silence for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called my mom. Hey mom, I said. Can you plan a family dinner next Sunday? I have something I want to share. She sounded happy. Warm. Of course, sweetheart. Everyone will be there. Good, I said. Everyone should be there. Sunday came. I dressed carefully that morning. Not in anything flashy. Just clean. Simple. Composed. I wanted to look like exactly what I was. A man who had nothing to prove, showing up anyway. The house smelled like my childhood. Mom's cooking. The particular warmth of that kitchen. For a moment, just a moment, I felt like a kid again. The quiet one. The invisible one. Then I straightened my jacket and walked inside. The whole family was there. Mom and Dad. Marcus, now a practicing physician, confident and polished. James, who had built a solid career in sports management. Aunts. Uncles. Cousins. The whole architecture of the family that had defined my worth for as long as I could remember. Dinner was warm and normal. Conversation flowed. Marcus talked about a difficult case he had handled. James talked about a deal he was working on. I listened, smiled, asked questions, participated like a normal human being. No one asked about me. Old habit. Then, as the plates were being cleared and coffee was being poured, my uncle leaned back in his chair with that familiar, comfortable authority and looked down the table at me. So Danny, he said, that same voice, that same smile. What's new with you these days? Still tinkering with computers? Tinkering. I looked at him for a moment. Then I smiled, genuinely, calmly, without a single drop of anger. Actually, I said, I do have some news. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket, pulled out a single folded document. The acquisition summary, official letterhead, final offer number, signatures pending. I unfolded it slowly, placed it flat on the table in front of me. Then I slid it toward the center. My mother reached for it first, the way mothers always reach for things first. She picked it up, started reading. I watched her face, watched the moment the number registered. Her lips parted. Her hand, slowly, almost involuntarily, rose to cover her mouth. Daniel, she whispered. My dad leaned over, read it over her shoulder. His face did something I had never seen it do before. It lost all its certainty. That permanent, quiet confidence that had always seemed so effortless. It just dissolved. His jaw tightened. His eyes moved from the paper to me, then back to the paper. Marcus reached across the table and took the document from my mother's hands. The brilliant one. The medical school graduate. The pride of the family. He read it in silence. When he looked up at me, I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen directed at me in my entire life. Respect. Pure, unguarded, genuine respect. James read it next. Set it down carefully. Looked at the table for a moment. Then looked at me and gave me a single slow nod. The kind that says more than words ever could. The table was silent. Not awkward silence. Not uncomfortable silence. The specific, heavy silence of a room full of people who are recalibrating everything they thought they knew. My uncle, the one who asked about tinkering, had gone completely still. The comfortable authority had drained from his posture. He looked smaller somehow. I picked up my coffee cup, took a slow, calm sip, and I said, quietly, without drama, without triumph in my voice. I started the company when I was 19, in my bedroom, while I was living here. My dad looked up sharply. While you were living here? While I was living here, I confirmed. while everyone thought I was going nowhere. Silence again. My mom's eyes were wet. Daniel, why didn't you tell us? I thought about that question for a long moment. Thought about the Thanksgiving table when I was 16. Thought about the car ride to community college. Thought about the night I almost told my dad and said just thirsty instead. Because I needed to build it without the weight of doubt, I said simply. I needed one space in my life where nobody had already decided what I was capable of. My dad was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Quieter. Older somehow. I'm sorry, son, he said. I should have believed in you. For words. For simple words I had waited my entire childhood to hear. I nodded slowly. No tears. No dramatic moment. Just acceptance. Acknowledgement. The closing of something that had been open and raw for a very long time. I know, Dad, I said. It's okay. And the beautiful thing, the thing that surprised me most, was that I meant it. I want to tell you something honest. The $47 million, it's real. The company, the acquisition, the document on that dinner table, all of it real. But if you're waiting for me to tell you that money was the point, you'll be disappointed. Because money was never the point. The point was the quiet boy at the Thanksgiving table whose voice got talked over before he could even finish a sentence. The point was the kid in the back of every family photograph who drifted there not because anyone pushed him, but because he had absorbed the message that that's where he belonged. That boy needed someone to believe in him. And when no one did, he had to learn to believe in himself. That is the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. Harder than building the company. Harder than the sleepless nights and the failed versions and the clients who canceled. Harder than any of it. Because the voices that doubt you the loudest are never strangers. They are always the people closest to you. And their doubt doesn't stay outside, it gets in. It settles into the walls of your mind and whispers at 3 a.m. when the work isn't going well and you're alone and exhausted. Maybe they were right. Maybe you really are the dumb one. Fighting that voice. Choosing, every single day, to keep building anyway. That is the real victory. Everything else is just the result. I want to speak directly to someone who might be watching this right now. Maybe you are the one in your family that nobody talks about with pride. Maybe you sit at tables where your achievements are invisible and other people's are celebrated. Maybe someone, a parent, a sibling, a relative who always seems to have an opinion, has made you feel like you are less than. Like you are behind. Like you have already been measured and found wanting. I want you to hear this clearly. They are measuring you with the wrong ruler. The things that made me seem like a failure in my family's eyes, my struggle with traditional academics, my quiet nature, my refusal to follow the path they expected, those exact things became my greatest strengths. My patience, my ability to work in solitude, my tendency to think differently, my stubbornness that they called a flaw, I called it fuel. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not the dumb one. You are building something they cannot see yet. And here is my final advice, the thing I wish someone had told me at 16, sitting at that Thanksgiving table with a frozen smile on my face. Do not wait for their approval to begin. Do not shrink yourself to fit their expectations. Do not explain your vision to people who are not ready to see it. Do not spend your energy convincing them. Spend it building. In silence. In the early mornings and the late nights. In the spaces between their doubt. Build so completely. Build so faithfully. Build with such quiet, relentless dedication that one day the only thing left to do is place the evidence on the table and let the silence speak. My family's laughter stopped the day I showed the numbers. But honestly, the day that mattered most to me wasn't that dinner. It was a Tuesday morning 3 years earlier, broke, tired, alone in my apartment when I almost quit. When the voice said, give up, and something deeper, something stubborn and certain, said, not yet. That Tuesday morning, that decision, that is where the story actually turned. The dinner was just the echo. Take care of yourself. Believe in yourself when no one else will. And keep building, especially when no one is watching.